Hi everyone, in this opportunity I will present about Indonesia's state budget. The definition of state budget or APBN is a planned state expenditure and revenue for the coming year which is linked to long-term plans and projects. In particular, the definition of the state budget refers to UUD Pasal 23 Ayat 1 in year 1945. It is stated that the state budget is the management of state finances every year which is stipulated by law. The state budget is carried out in an open and responsible manner and is aimed at the greatest prosperity of the people. Why does the state need a budget? Because there are goods and services that people will not necessarily purchase from their own money, such as the services provided by the police, and there are services that require outside intervention to ensure their efficiency. The government provides these goods and services to the citizens, and for this purpose it has to spend money from the public treasury. The budget is a plan that is set in advance to supervise the efficiency of public expenditure, to find a source of financing for the expenditures, and to decide which is goods and services will be provided for the government. Furthermore, the definition of APBN is spelled out in UU Nomor 17 Tahun 2003 concerning state finance. In the law, what is meant by APBN includes the following 5 things. First, APBN is the annual financial plan of the state government approved by the Legislative Assembly or DPR. Second, APBN consists of revenue budget, expenditure budget, and financing. Third, the APBN covers a period of 1 year, starting for January 1st to December 31. Fourth, APBN determined annually by law. And fifth, APBN has the functions of authorization, planning, supervision, allocation, distribution, and stabilization. The purpose of preparation of the state budget. The state budget has the aim of regulating state revenues and expenditures so that increased production and job field, as well as increased economic growth can be achieved, so that public welfare can be realized. In addition, the purpose of preparing the state budget is as a guide for state revenues and expenditures in carrying out state duties to increase production and employment opportunities in order to increase economic growth and prosperity of the community. Before being ratified, the state budget was called State Revenue and Expenditure Budget Plan or RAPBN. This RAPBN is then discussed together between the DPR and government representatives. There are several cycles of state budget discussions that are very long and involve many parties. During the budget discussion, a budget plan is drawn up which is usually discussed at the DPR Commission level with the relevant ministries or state institutions that are budget users. State budget or APBN functions. Based on Article 3, Paragraph 4 of Law Number 17 in 2003 concerning state finance, it is emphasized that the state budget has 6 functions as follows. The state budget is to function as authorization. This means that the state budget becomes the basis for carrying out revenues and expenditures for the year concerned. Furthermore, the function of the state budget is as a planning. This means that the state budget becomes a guideline for management in planning activities for the year concerned. Then the function of the state budget is a supervision, which means that the state budget becomes a guideline for assessing whether the activities of implementing state government are in accordance with the provisions that have been set. Then, as an allocation function, the state budget must be directed to reduce the movement and waste of resources, as well as increase the efficiency and effectiveness of the economy. Next is the distribution function, namely that the state budget policy must pay attention to a sense of justice and prosperity. Finally, the function of the state budget is as a stabilization, namely that the government budget becomes a tool to maintain and seek a balance of economic fundamentals. Principles of state budget. Dynamic budget principle. The budget is relatively dynamic if government savings continue to increase percentage dependence on development financing from foreign loans continues to decline. Principles of functional budget. Functional budget means that foreign aid or loans only function to finance the development budget and not to regular budgets. Deficit budget principle. The difference with the principle of a balanced budget is that the deficit budget is determined. First, foreign loans are not recorded as a source of revenue but as a source of financing. Second, the budget deficit is closed with domestic financing sources plus foreign financing sources. Surplus. If the state budget has a surplus, it does not necessarily mean that the country has excess cash, but it happens because the state revenue budget is greater than the state budget. The state budget surplus can be budgeted for principal debt payments, state capital participation or investment, and the formation of reserve funds. Deficit. If the state budget runs a deficit, the deficit can be financed by financing receipts, including the receipt of such financing, for example, the excess budget calculation of the previous year, use of reserves, receipt of loans, proceeds from the sale of domestic assets, and acceptance of loans or receipts of receivables. State budget structure. Broadly speaking, the structure of the state budget is state revenue and grants, state expenditures, primary balance, budget surplus or deficit, and financing. The structure of the state budget is stated in a format called I account. In some cases, the contents of the I account are often referred to as the state budget posture. Some of the factors that determine the state budget posture include state purchase. The size of state spending can be influenced by several factors, namely state administration needs, the risk of natural disasters, and the impact of the global crisis, development policy. State financing. State financing is divided into two types, namely domestic and foreign financing. Domestic financing includes domestic banking financing and domestic non-banking financing, or results from asset management, net domestic bonds, guarantee obligation, net state securities, and government investment funds. Tax revenue. Domestic tax revenues consist of income tax, value-added tax and services income, and sales tax on luxury goods, land and building tax revenue, excise income, other tax revenues. Furthermore, international tax revenues are income from import duties and income from export duties. Country income. State revenue is obtained through tax revenues and non-tax revenues. Tax revenues for the state budget are usually through customs and excise tax revenues and grants. Taxes are an inseparable part of the state budget. Non-tax revenue derive from revenue from natural resources and natural gas, revenue from non-oil and gas natural resources, revenue from BUMN profits, profit income from banking BUMN, profit income from non-banking BUMN, other PNBP, income from BMN management, service income, interest income, prosecutors and judiciary revenues, and proceeds of criminal acts of corruption and others. State budget preparation mechanism. Based on income aspect. First, intensify existing budget sector revenues in the amount and provision of deposits. Second, intensifying the collection and collection of state receivables in terms of rental proceeds from state buildings, ships, or airplanes. Third, intensifying claims for compensation suffered by the state and imposing fixed fines. Based on aspect of expenditure. First, wise, effective, and efficient, and in accordance with the technical needs of the year. Second, it is directed and controlled in accordance with the budget and program of ongoing activities. Third, maximizing domestic products and suppressing the rate of imports from abroad by looking at the existing domestic potential. Indonesia State Budget for 2022. Indonesian Finance Minister Sri Mulyani detailed that the positive performance of APBN was driven by state revenue, which was recorded at 302.4 trillion rupiahs, an increase of 37.7% from the total state revenue in February 2022, which amounted to 219.6 trillion rupiahs. State spending was also observed to have decreased slightly by 0.1% from spending as of February 2021, which reached 282.9 trillion rupiahs. With the state's income and expenditure conditions, the primary balance also recorded a profit of 61.7 trillion rupiahs, or an improvement of up to 366.1% from the primary balance until February 2021, which had a deficit of 22.9 trillion Indonesian rupiahs. With this surplus, the realization of budget financing decreased by 69.4%, or was recorded at 84 trillion rupiahs, or smaller than 274.6 trillion rupiahs as of February 2021. And because of that, the remaining over budget calculation was recorded at 103.7 trillion rupiahs. State budget during the pandemic. Minister of Finance Sri Mulyani Indrawati confirmed that state revenues in 2020 experienced a very deep contraction while spending increased very high when the COVID-19 pandemic hit Indonesia. Realization of state revenue in 2020 state budget is 1.6 trillion rupiahs, or 96.9% of the revenue budget in the 2020 state budget. The realization of state revenues consists of tax revenues of 1.3 trillion rupiahs, non-tax state revenues of 343 trillion rupiahs, and grant receipts of 18.8 trillion rupiahs. Meanwhile, the realization of state spending in the 2020 state budget reached 2.3 trillion rupiahs, or 94.7%, consisting of central government spending of 1.8 trillion rupiahs, as well as transfers to the regions and village funds of 700 trillion rupiahs. The effect of the state budget on the Indonesia's economy. Through the state budget or APBN, the public can find out the direction, goals, and priorities of development carried out by the government in the planned time frame, so that the entire community can unite their views and take joint steps with the government in realizing development, which is the main priority in accordance with what is outlined in the state budget. In general, the effect of the state budget on the economic condition of a country can be described as follows. First, increase community economic growth so that the amount of GNP can be known from year to year. Second, creating a country's monetary stability because the amount of money circulating in the community can be regulated. Third, generating public investment because industries in various circles or groups of society can be facilitated and developed. Fourth, streamlining the distribution of income by regulating the sources of revenue and the use of expenditures so that the state can find out the source of revenues and the use of these funds for personal expenditures, goods purchase, and so on. And the last one, opening new job fields with the development will be able to absorb a lot of workers so that the unemployment rate will be reduced and improve people's welfare. Thank you for your attention.